Hello and welcome everyone to this Rappler Plus live chat. My name is Happy Kararan and I'll be moderating our interview this afternoon. So, with me today to talk about art and journalism and where they intersect and how we use them to tell stories about human rights. With me today is, of course, artist and activist May Paner. She is here joining me on screen. Photojournalist Raffy Lerma, and of course, Rappler's multimedia reporter Rambo Talabong. So welcome May, Raffy, and Rambo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having
Hi,
us.
afternoon.
Hello.
All right, so we'll go straight to our first question. May, you are currently touring. You have a world tour now of your film Tao Po, which really brought to life a lot of these stories of Duterte's drug war. So I want to ask, this is a question for all of you. What are some of the challenges that you face when you tell these kinds of stories? You know, it's a very difficult topic, human rights violations. What are some of the challenges you face in your profession and what you do when telling these stories? So let's start with you, May.
Ako, ang challenge ko palagi is to for the people to watch Tao po. Kasi while when people get to watch the film, they say that it has a very strong message. A lot of people should see it, but to get them to actually watch it has been a challenge. And like right now, we have Tao Po, Love for Humanity, a world tour, which will happen online. It started February 24 until March 9. And it's not that easy to actually tell people to give Tao Po a chance to open their hearts and their minds. And so there.
All right. What about you, Rafi?
I think personally, yung challenge ko is covering the same topic over and over again and talking about it. I've been doing this since yung 2016, and honestly, parang para na akong sirang plaka minsan. And sometimes nakakapagod din talaga, but of course, you know that we have to um, tell these stories and create awareness. And more than that, I think yung pag-empathize, I think yun yung mahirap talaga mag-penetrate sa maraming Filipinos. But yeah, it has to be done. So yun.
Okay, and ikaw naman, Rambo.
For me, because I'm covering right now, I'm covering Congress, right, and the elections. But looking back on it and covering the drug war, it's the mass violations, how much violations are being committed, and how small we are as a community covering this, how small we are as a group who are covering this intently. When you look at the numbers, there are thousands of stories to tell, thousands of killings, thousands of questionable police operations. But how do you sift through that? How do you speak with the right people? And another factor here is, of course, once you find these people who are, you believe, can represent or at least give people care for this issue, it's another story when it comes to asking them to actually speak out, because you're asking them to tell you traumatizing stories, and you would have to, it's not regurgitate, but you also are a medium to the world for them. It's really difficult because as we speak right now too, I'm pretty sure this campaign is continuing. As we cover elections every day, the anti-drug campaign is continuing, and they are not stopping. And they are such a big organization. The Philippine National Police is 200,000. Journalists are only by the dozens. Artists are only by the dozens. But these violations are continue. Sometimes you would really feel so small and powerless once you pursue the story and once you try to give justice to something that's so big.
Right. Very interesting point, Rambo, talking about the scale and the magnitude of what needs to be told versus people who need to who tell those stories. So there's a discrepancy with the number of stories to be told and the number of storytellers. So my question then is, for you, May, as an artist, what are some of the things that would stop, let's say, fellow artists or fellow performers from telling stories like this? Is it fear, or what are the barriers for people to not tell that story?
Well, ever since I started my Wanna Change videos, well then, it was so difficult for so many other artists to speak out because one, they're always thinking of the economics. Because sometimes, I'd ask them, for example, to join a Wanna Change video, which is very political, and then they'd say, me, my network will not allow me, my manager will not allow me. What if people will not watch my movies anymore because I'm becoming too political? And I feel very bad because it feels as though to do the right thing um, will mean that there will be less income for them, will mean that they're really very fear based actually. But that was then. I think now more and more there are artists who are actually speaking up, making their voices heard, singing songs, dancing, painting, and I think more and more they're be- they're understanding the importance of what it means to be part of the national conversation. And as artists, they have the responsibility to respond to issues that doesn't directly affect them because it does affect them. Maybe not directly, but what affects one Filipino affects us all.
Thank you, May. Raffy, it struck me a while ago when you were saying na feeling mo, pakiramdam mo, parang kang sirang plaka, you keep telling the same thing, pero nothing's changed. So I think, a lot of people feel the same way in the sense na we know we keep hearing these stories. Every day we are bombarded with these kinds of stories. So I think my question to you is, how do you respond to that challenge then? Even for you personally, parang meron ka bang ginagawa para sa sarili mo so that hindi parang to continue to find the courage and strength to keep covering because it will take its toll on you personally and to the
Yeah.
greater audience as well na parang how do we keep telling the story that needs to be told when we're at a stage na parang quota na we've heard so much and it also causes us a lot of stress when we hear and read about these stories. So how do you respond to that challenge?
Well, I really thought about it. Yung after a while, after a year or two, medyo nadidrain na ako seeing all, death so many times. Talaga nakaka-drain din sa'yo. So, um, I nag-step back rin ako. I had to assess rin yung sarili ko. But I think yung what drove me to continue doing this is, let's face it, hindi naman ako namatayan eh. Hindi naman ako namatay ng pamilya. And I find strength sa mga mothers, sa mga families who are seeking justice. At doon ko nakukuha yung lakas ko eh. And then parang nag-isang journey na rin sa akin personally and some of my colleagues na we are just documenting yung buong nangyari and for them seeking justice, yung accountability, yun talaga nagda-drive sa akin ng strength. Let's put it this way, pag tinitino ko nga 2016, I've seen some of these people who got killed. At now, 2022, 2021 nag-start, nakita ko na sila na ini-exhume. And that's the amount of time na nakita ko na yung buong process, the whole cycle of it. And talagang, nakikita ko rin yung mga families who are, of course, yung start, very emotional, yung sakit, andun. But now, nakikita mo na rin sila, nag-rise. I mean, yung going about their lives. But with that thing in mind, kino-continue pa rin mag-seek na accountability, yung justice. And that's, I guess, yun yung talagang healing. And yun, that's all I can say about that.
Thank you, Raffy. For you, Rambo, I think you and Raffy have very similar experiences no covering the drug war. My question is, because it's such a sensitive and painful topic, what kind of care do you put in the articles that you write, the reports that you do about it, given there's so much sensitivity about the topic that you're covering?
That's really one of the biggest challenges, not the sensitivity of the story. That's why we always try to coordinate with the intermediaries who know the story better than we do. Nandiyan si Raffy, who is actually very closely monitoring the families. We try to consult with him as much as we can. There are people who we can't name here who are playing critical roles when it comes to telling the stories of these families. We can't just go there and broadcast everything about them without any vouching, without checking their security, without asking them, are you sure about this? And there are times that talagang minsan, once the story is out, nare-realize nila yung gravity. So these are really big things that happen when you tell the story. In our mediums, especially sa Rappler, since we have millions of followers, it's hard to make them understand that once your story is out here, a lot of people will see it. And once it's out, hindi nila naiintindihan. So that's a challenge for me trying to explain to them. Napakaraming tao po makakita nito. And I guess moving forward, it's really a matter of making them think about their experience if they're really willing to share it. And kung magiging dangerous sa kanila, it's better to step back.
Same question I think goes for you, May. So you chose for Tao Po, you chose the medium of theater and film, and you chose four characters, and there were monologues about these characters. That was the main performance ng Tao Po. So in the process of making this, what were the kinds of what care did you put in doing in the stories, because nga napaka sensitive ng mga topic and ng mga narratives that you were sharing? What were the safeguards that you did so that you are able to tell these stories with care?
Well, of course, like for example, Raffy's here and he's one of the characters. No, we really wanted to portray them to the most as authentic as possible. Of course, we're coming from truth because we really interviewed the three, no, except for the police slash vigilante, of course, and and um, and when they entrusted their stories to us, like Rafi's or Nane and Vanessa, we just made sure that there was so much love given to their stories, so that when we actually when I actually portray them, or when people actually watch them, they can also feel the care and the love we took in making sure that we were being authentic about it, and were very factual about it, and we wanted to speak to them not just in their heads, but for the work of art to get to their hearts. That is why Taupo is the way it is, because we gave power to the narrative. To me, as an actor and a filmmaker, producer, I love the narrative so much, and I made sure that the narrative was exactly how, for example, I portrayed Raffy, and I made sure that the essence of Raffy's story is what was conveyed in the piece as a theater, in its theater form, and in film. Of course, you know that in the film documentary, there was also already Raffy and Nanay Rusing and Vanessa were already there speaking as themselves. I mean, after seeing the part where I performed their stories, and I think that the connection between me as a performer, and them who owned the stories, made sure that the connection was smooth. It was it was something that deepened the narrative of what they had just seen prior, after my performance.
Thank you, May. So Rafi, my question now is for you. What was that like for you? So I think si Rambo also sort of had this experience when there was a documentary made about Rappler. Na suddenly the storyteller is now in the spotlight. You're no longer behind the scenes. The story is about you and how you tell your stories. What was that like for you, Rafi, when you saw May doing a performance? You know, she performed your monologue, expressing your narrative. What was that like for you?
Well, it was I allowed it. Alam ko naman yung sadya ni May, at it was it wasn't the first. It wasn't the first na parang I was filmed for doing my work. And talaga yung purpose ko, honestly, during in 2016, that's why I allowed myself to be documented too, was to reach a bigger audience. And basically yun lang eh. I didn't think about yung ginagawa ko. Wala eh. It's just to reach a bigger audience, especially sa magnitude ng nangyayari sa Philippines, yung especially when society allows or approves the killings to happen, and something has to be done. And yun yung basically yun yung ko, yun yung nasadya ko talaga. It's not about me. I never wanted to be I never wanted to be there. I mean, documented, but I think nakita ko mas yung weight na it has to be done. So yun. I would rather be private person. Wala nga akong Facebook. So to lang. So yeah.
Thank you, Raffy. And same for you, Rambo. What was it like? Syempre, journalists were really, sort of like the frontliners. Kayo nakakita nito, and it took its toll on you. And then of course, the attacks happened, and suddenly the spotlight is on the journalist when really all you wanted was the spotlight to be on your story, on the people that you were covering. So what was that like for you when that was happening? Na ang mga journalists na ngayon ang pinag-uusapan.
Thinking about it, happy kasi natanong din to sa amin. I think yun din talaga, if I want to tell this story well, my way of storytelling has to be examined, and the state of media cannot be ignored. Kasi if we go back to the thousand cuts, it goes to telling the story of Philippine media as limited, the freedom of press in the Philippines. And it's inextricable when it comes to trying to tell these human rights stories. We can't tell the stories of these people we care about, these important stories that we believe in, if our institutions, if the media institutions are crumbling, if Filipinos do not trust us enough to tell these stories, if the government is weaponizing everything it has for the media to be distrusted by the people. So looking at, at least on the movie itself, A Thousand Cuts, it made me realize that there's really so much work to be done. Aside from getting the stories of these victims, we also have to fight for our right to tell their stories. We also need to fight and assert the validity of our power to tell these stories. Aside from, of course, it has to be sensitive. Kasi kung nilabas natin itong mga storya, pero sarado naman tayo, parang mahirap din. Hindi rin tayo attain ng audience, hindi na makikita yung storya natin. Kung pulos kasi nungalingan tungkol sa Rappler to the point that Filipinos do not trust us, parang na-invalidate na rin lang. Hindi lang yung Rappler, but also these stories that we got on the ground.
Right. Thank you, Rambo. I think my question now, just quickly, for May and Raffy, do you experience also attacks or harassment when you're doing your work?
Ako kasi, in fact, ang laki nga ng effort ko to reach out to the perpetrators. Of course, there are attacks because of course I'm very present on social media at hindi ko naman maiiwasan yon. But in spite of that, in fact, I have made private screenings to the police. I seek them out because I feel like I cannot just show tao po to the choir. I have to be able to make conversations, especially those whose consciousness allows for deaths. And unless I risk to get out of my comfort zone and be able to make conversation with the people whom I feel should be able to understand the story of Raffy, Nanay Rusing, the policeman, and Lovely, then I will not make progress in terms of revolutionizing consciousness so that people actually get to understand what it means to be human and what does it take for us to be human. Yun lang naman ang sinasabi, tao po. And I really want to keep on telling people that even if it doesn't affect us directly, we should be affected. We should take responsibility because to be quiet is to actually, we know that is to be complicit to the crimes that are happening around us. And as human beings, we have to do something. And I hope that with the works of media, the likes of Raffy, Rambo, um, together we are able to, whether it's one film at a time, one photo at a time, one interview at a time. Now we are able to affect consciousness so that we can actually understand what it means to to be human and to be there for our fellow Filipinos.
Right. So May, thank you for that. I think you talked about also, I think that the transformative quality of the stories that we tell through the pictures and the articles and the performances that you three do, you're able to transform your reader or your audience member. So I think I want to ask now, in your experience, meron ba kayong nakitang transformation na nangyari with either an article that you wrote or a photo that you took? I'll start with you, Raffy.
Yeah, kinukwento ko to lagi sa talks. I always before kasi parang I would always leave the photograph to speak for itself. Parang ganun yung thinking ko eh. But after na nakunan ko tong isang photo na to, yung kay si Michael Sharon, who was shot, who was an alleged drug pusher, and he was cradled by yung partner niya, si General Laires, and people called it like a pieta. It symbolized yung pieta. So after that photo came out and it got a lot of attention, impact niya, and it was even mentioned sa first State of the Nation address ni President Duterte. And I was attacked for that photo. They were saying that it was staged. They were saying that I hired actors pa nga. At doon nag-start ako magsalita eh. Doon nag-start yung, yun nga, sabi ko, wala akong social media before. I just posted stuff on Instagram, not even work-related. But when they were attacking my credibility as a journalist, may something na nag-start sa akin na I started speaking out. That's why I allowed myself to talk on documentaries. I'm doing all of these talks, hundreds. I have to admit, hundreds na from 2016 onwards, here and abroad. And to be honest, gusto ko yung makipag-usap sa mga tao, especially those who are for this, for the killings. At sila yung gusto ko talaga makausap. They will always tell the parang, but binabalikan ko sila eh. Saan nyo nakukuha itong mga stories nyo? Nababasa nyo lang, di ba? Ako nakita ko to eh. You cannot deny me that. I've seen hundreds. And I've seen I'm not an expert, but from my mere observation, nakikita ko na may mali. And yun eh. So basically, at this day and age of social media, fake news, what I'm saying is you really have to defend. You really have to defend yung truth. You have to defend your stories mo. You have to defend yung photos mo. So, hirap na sabihin, pero sila gumawa sa akin ito eh.
Yeah. Thank you, Rafi. And I think, Rambo, you can relate to this too, I'm sure. Do you have an experience na nakita mo the stories you tell, that you write? Have you ever experienced people coming up to you saying na, because of your story na transform sila, or, any stories like that?
Transformation, of course, we always strive to tell stories with impact, but of course it's not the only way, diba? We never expect what will happen once we tell stories. When it comes to institutions, we always aim to be the conscience of the institutions that we're covering. So we try to be the conscience of the PNP chief. So they try to be more careful once they bring out pronouncements, because when they set out to say a kill order, policemen will take it literally. We will question that every day, every time there's a press conference. Police chief, are you serious about what you're saying? Yung kill order ba ni President, totoo ba yun? If it's not true, you have to tell the police that it's not true. Once there's new policy, it has to be clarified. Yung mga paghuhuli ng mga tambay earlier in the Duterte administration, marami na clarify naman doon once we read out explainers. And of course, We had countless fact checks of the Philippine National Police describing which towns are crime infested to justify the killings that they were doing. A lot of these are a matter of us being the watchdog. I wouldn't say meron super big transformation when it comes to the institution itself, but a part of it is also hoping that in the future our stories will be looked back at. Even if mapagod yung mga tao ngayon, even if the institutions are tired, we tell these stories in the hope that once we look back at it, once people we hope are smarter, who have better hearts inside them, to look back at these stories and would actually say that this shouldn't have happened. It should not happen ever again. When it comes to people who are reading our stories, there are lots of people who really care about the drug war, even if they are fatigued when it comes to hearing and listening to these stories. There are always new ears, new eyes to perceive the stories that we're telling. And I'm happy to see that as recent as this year, there are people who are messaging me, how do I help these families? Um, so it really boils down to hoping people would care more about our stories and these people that we cover.
Right. Thank you, Rambo. And final question to you, May. So from, you've performed this around the Philippines to different kinds of audiences. I know you've performed this as well in different countries. Any stories of, transformation from an audience member that you saw that really struck you and that you remember?
Wow, there's so many, after watching the play or the film. But like I remember this one lady, she was an audience in, I think, in London. And what she was crying after watching Taupo, and she said, I'll give my father a chance. Because I think her father is in jail up to now for drugs. And after seeing Taupo, he said that, my even if my mother actually committed suicide, and my father didn't know about it, and that was really because of the way he has been using drugs, and how now he's in jail because of it. But she said that after watching Taupo, that she said addicts should be given a chance. And that reaction from that woman really really touched me. In fact, there was also this other woman in Berlin who was crying also after watching it, and she said, "My God, I am an addict, and here in Europe, addicts like me are very well taken care of. We are given the chance to live." And it is just so sad that if I were living in the Philippines, maybe I'm just one of the numbers that May has related in the part of Raffy Lerma as journalist. And it pains me to know that I have this much privilege living in a foreign country, which my fellow Filipinos cannot even enjoy.
Right. So very, very powerful experiences really through the stories that you tell. So thank you very much, Rafi, Rambo, and May for joining us today for this Rappler Plus live chat, where we talk about telling these difficult stories of human rights, telling them and seeing how art and journalism work together in the task of truth telling and bringing these stories to light. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to all our viewers who are watching online. This has been the Rappler Plus live chat. We will continue the conversation offline. My name is Happy Ferrarin, and this is Rappler. Thank you.
Thank you.